Hi, this is Rachel Dworkin from the Chemung County Historical Society. Today is June 17th, 2020, and I am here interviewing
Talima Aaron, President, Board of Trustees, John W. Jones Museum.
Okay, this is for the COVID Memory Project, so we're going to be talking about how COVID has impacted the John Jones Museum. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Certainly. Right now, we would be open normally. This would have been our fourth year of opening the doors to the public. And as you know, Rachel, we're a very small museum and with a small group of volunteers. And this is the season that we really call our own. So we would usually try to be open June, July, and August. This pandemic and the fact that you need to practice social distancing has made it difficult for us to consider open season. What it is doing is helping us to reimagine how we present ourselves to the public, how we can expand the audience through a virtual presence, perhaps look at how we can do something outside. But it really presents a challenge because we're so small. The square footage doesn't really provide the space for great social distancing and a good visit for the community.
So, when you're talking about going to a virtual tour, virtual exhibit, would that be online, or would that be like a phone kind of tour that you were thinking of, or what do you have specific plans, or are you just sort of spitballing at this point?
It's pretty much a plan.
Okay.
In fact, I'm in the process of grant writing to get funds to actually have someone shoot it. We actually want a virtual tour. And it could serve several purposes, so it'll allow anybody who's looking for information about the Confederate burial, about the Underground Railroad, about Black history in Elmira. We will be able to provide this visual history so that what I'm hoping, it intrigues people enough, it'll get them to come out. What we want to have happen, we want to spark the interest of the public so they consider coming to see us in person. And when they come to see us, of course, they get to share in everything else that Elmira has to offer. We have a great historic. John Jones would be the destination, and the rest of the town can benefit.
Okay, cool. So I noticed that you're wearing a Black Lives Matter mask. Has the museum as an institution celebrating the life of a prominent Black man been involved in that movement in any capacity?
Well, let's be honest, this hurling of George Floyd, this very visual torture of an innocent man, the recent events are very personal in how you react. I just met with my board yesterday, and I asked them, if I was asked this question, how do you want me to represent the board, was placed to each member that was present. But one of the gentlemen said something that I really liked because it was a nod to our history. And he said these killings, these police killings, are much like the lynchings of the past. And he said instead of having lynch mobs, they have actual people in authority who's supposed to protect and serve become that lynch mob. We have continued to overlook history. I mean, there was indicators all along. I mean, we had slavery, okay, and that was abhorrent. So we abolished slavery, but we still kept racism as an institution by creating the Jim Crow laws. Okay, we slowly got rid of the But now the racism is so systemic and is so deeply embedded in who America is that people don't even recognize when it's happening. If it doesn't result in something like this, it just kind of went under the radar. Result in something like this, it just kind of went under the radar. So I feel strongly that museums like John Jones, this is a little glimpse into the past, and it also illustrates how individuals face these horrific. When I think about John Jones, his story is so compelling because you're talking about a man who was enslaved, escaped, and when he reached freedom, it wasn't just about him. He reached back and helped over 800 others escape slavery, and also had the capacity to look at Confederate soldiers, those who were fighting to keep them oppressed, in a humane manner with compassion, and treat them with respect and dignity in death that, he would not receive in life. And let's not stop there. This man also stood for the rights of all because he was a big advocate for voting for, at that time, Black men couldn't vote, women couldn't vote. So he stood for those rights. So here was a man who came from this background that could become part of a community, be a fully functioning citizen, and contribute by standing for those who can't stand for themselves. I think his life is aspirational. It's a blueprint for others. And the thing that amazes me, nowhere in his narrative is hate or reverse racism. They say those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. Well, it seems like we're doing it over and over and over. And it really took this horrible killing that I think it just took the graphic murder of this man, this 8 minutes, 46 seconds, to really tug at the core values of every human being. The taking of a would not watch this film because I can't unsee it, but I think like what happened in the 60s when the Pettit Bridge was televised and America saw dogs being sicked and America saw people being clubbed, brought home that this was a real thing and people were dying for it and we need to do something. And if you didn't know what was going on or if it was under the radar, here was visual proof that yes, it is happening and it's here at 6 o'clock at your, dinner time news. The same thing with George Floyd. This is just, it's been going on. Unfortunately, it did continue past his death. African Americans have been talking about it, they've been yelling about it, they complained about it, and you almost voices silenced because we're not getting anywhere. This kind of brought it to the fore, and those folks that were really moved by it, felt it did not represent who they felt we were or where America should be, or voting with their feet by protesting, by demanding change.
Were you involved at all in the rally on the 5th of June here? Did you attend? There was a large march that started at Ernie Davis Park. Were you involved in that?
I certainly was. Well, involved as a citizen. So
Okay.
I did go to march. My husband, my grandchildren. And we took that chance in this COVID environment. My husband has a serious condition, so we've been really trying to be careful, but this was so important to us that we tried to find our little spot with social distance and be able to add our voices to this group of people, add to the number so that it had the weight. So yeah, we did go.
Okay. So you mentioned that your husband has health issues that can be exacerbated by COVID. How have you and your husband and your family been adapting to that situation?
It's extremely surreal because, you know, you don't even realize your daily to have the freedom to just come and go as you please. That looks and feels like when you're told that you need to stay home more, go out when it's only necessary, have the proper protective gear on, at least a mask, gloves. First, it's very scary because we really don't know about it, and we were fixed on listening to all the news about it. We've since come to taking that down to just a drop of news because it just makes you extremely anxious. So it took a while to wrap your head around. Now, how do you go about your daily life? We were saying and thinking about how grateful we were to be in the position we are. We're retired. We're not rich, but we can meet our needs. And I started wondering about folks that, weren't in this position, or younger people who were still working and now they're not, or they had to work and they have children. So all of those things come to mind. I thought about my sons and their wives and my grandchildren who were in college and away from home, and now what happens? In our family, my college-age daughter, of course, came home and finished her junior year online, which was less than desirable because she's a biology major and she needed labs. So, what are we going to do going forward with education? In my family, we lost an uncle in Philadelphia. 3 weeks ago, I lost my stepfather in Manhattan. The hard part was we couldn't go down to attend services for either of them. Thankfully, we had a family member who had some audio-visual experience, and he filmed the graveside service for us and put it on YouTube. Was limited. Some of them, in Philly, I think they didn't even want to do funerals. So, if you had a viewing, it's in and out. It was just very hard to get together as a family to grieve and mourn and comfort each other. And then we had a couple of local deaths, not COVID related, but during COVID impacts it because, again, you can't gather together. You can't do the big repast after. You really don't visit each other, going to the home. It's kind of like you drop off things, see each other from a distance, and you send cards and you talk, but we've become kind of a touchless society now. It's just very different. Personally, for my church, we've been meeting in our car. Monumental Baptist Church, Reverend Corey Cook.
Okay.
That's a PSA. Come and join us. But we've been meeting and it's been robust. I mean, we have a full parking lot.
So everyone parks in their cars and then the preacher preaches in the parking lot while you all listen? Is that how it works?
Yes, he has a PA system and he stands in front of a mic and he can walk with the mic amongst the cars. And, and sometimes when we want to say amen, we might toot, toot, beep, beep. If we want to show our affirmation of what he's saying, this Sunday is our first Sunday coming back. And as he says, we're going to have to practice radical obedience. Listen to our ushers. In other words, don't try to sit in the same seat you've been sitting in every Sunday because that might not be possible. So I know that they have some plans in place to safe. When I think of the museum and COVID, and I said that we're not open, the thing that's really, really important to me is not only the safety of the visitor, but also the safety of my volunteers. I'm trying to protect not only the public, but my volunteers, my trustees, as well as making sure that anyone who visits the museum has, a rich experience, which would be a little difficult in our 750 square feet to do with social distancing and so on. But we are getting creative and figuring out ways to share Mr. Jones' legacy. I think if Mr. Jones was alive right now, he'd be out there, he would march, he was an activist, he sat on he would definitely be a marcher. He was not silent. This is not a time to be politically correct. This time requires that everyone take a stand. I have an African American museum, so to speak, because the subject is African American, which makes it very easy for me to have a position, because we know Black Lives Matter. We know Black History matters, period.
Yeah. Definitely. Is there anything else you would like to add, either about COVID, the Jones Museum, or the Black Lives Matter movement, or anything else that's happening right now?
I don't think so. In the beginning of COVID, it started to get a little depressing for me, a little anxious. I think that we're resilient. I think history shows us that we've come out of times. We survived. I believe we'll survive this too. We're just anxious. We want a cure yesterday, and it takes time for them to learn what it is we need to stop it. But I think we'll do fine. I think we'll be more creative. This time of quarantine has already made us more, I think, mindful. It has made us think, slow down. People say giving us time to reflect. As far as the racial climate right now, I think that COVID helped us be able to really think about and concentrate on what was happening. And where and how we should use our voices, because we have less distraction having to be home a little bit more.
Okay, so nothing else to add, or?
No, except for John Jones. Jones died, but his legacy lives on, and we are here to promote that. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, well.